This is an interview with Ms. Judy Woods for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're presently at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Today is March 19, 1997. Ms. Woods, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us today.
I think it's noisy.
Ms. Woods, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and sit and talk with me today about Birmingham and the movement. What we're attempting to do is simply develop a history of the movement. I'll just start by asking you some general questions about your family. You were born here in Birmingham, so
I was born in Birmingham.
where are your parents from originally?
My mother is from Silicaga, Alabama, and Daddy was born here in Birmingham, Jackson County.
Okay. How many brothers and sisters?
12 brothers and sisters. There's 7 boys and 6 girls.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. It's quite a large family.
Where do you fit?
I'm number 3, and that puts 10 under me, which means I changed a lot of diapers because Pampers were not out at that time.
That's
So there are 10 kids under me.
So you grew up fast.
I actually grew up very fast.
Yes, yes.
Tending the babies.
That should be exciting. I always wanted to have 10 brothers and sisters, but I only had 2. So,
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's really strange because we don't really appreciate what a great time we had. We didn't appreciate it, but we now do. We look back on it and think just, oh, remember this and remember that. And, we had a great childhood.
yeah, well, that's great. Your mother and father, how much education did each of your parents have?
My mom only has a high school education, but of course, my father went on Miles College, started the Birmingham Baptist Bible College, University of Alabama here in Birmingham, several other places. He has 2, I think, earned degrees and maybe about 5, 6, or 20 honorary degrees. That's been his story. He was always very, very studious. Always encouraged us to.
Now, he's a minister.
He is a minister.
And how many of your brothers are ministers?
Of the 7 boys, 5 of the boys are ministers. 4 of them now are pastors.
Mhm.
So.
And what are the girls doing now?
Well, I have one sister that is married, 2 sisters, as a matter of fact, that are married to ministers. And they're both housewives right now. They were employed, but supported their husbands in the ministry. They're housewives. Have another sister that works for a brother that Chris owns Magic City Construction Company. So she is an assistant to him, an administrative assistant. Jeanette is at the Birmingham Urban League, and Sheila is at McDonald's. And I think that's all of them. I should be 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's all of them. That's about
That sounds
5.
like a great
Yeah.
family.
With-
Yes. Now, did your mother ever work outside of the home?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, she did. The youngest kid, Quentin, once he became old enough to start school, he's 6 or 7 years old, she did start to work. And the only thing she knew to do was keep kids, so she became a daycare instructor.
Okay.
And she did that for several years.
Right.
Until Daddy said, I'm tired of working. Wanted that hot meal on the table when he came home. She worked for a few years, but other than that, that was it.
Did your father ever work outside of the ministry?
Yes. Traditionally, Black churches don't pay ministers enough, but for as many kids as he had, when I was very, very young, I remember him working in the Phoenix building downtown as a custodian. Have vague recollections of other things that he's done, but he's now worked for the city of Birmingham as a student advisor at Parker High School.
And what church does he?
He pastors Shiloh Baptist Church in Norwood. And ironically, my grandfather, his father, pastored that church for approximately 40 years. before he retired. So
did he succeed his father?
he didn't immediately succeed his father. They had another pastor that stayed there just a couple, 3-4 years. And Daddy's been there approximately 11 or 12 years now. So,
Well, let's get to you just for a minute. What do you remember when you started first grade? And where did you start first grade?
oh yes, I can take you back further than that. I remember kindergarten. It was, it's a church is on the south side now, of course. It's Green Liberty Baptist Church, and in the basement was Mama Yet's kindergarten. That wasn't the name of it, but her name, the instructor, was a heavyset, real strict disciplinarian type, Mama Yet Walker. We just always called it Mama Yet Kindergarten. And from there, we were living on the south side. I went to Washington Elementary School. My first grade teacher was Mrs. Patton. Remember that?
Is there anything that stands out in your mind about Washington?
Yes, because of my father being intellectual, I guess you could say, he really stressed that on us. So, and I don't even know if they're still doing that now, but I got skipped. That's what we call it, or put up a grade. So Dr. Wayman Matheson was principal at that time. And he called me in the office to tell me that, and I just didn't understand what he was talking about. And I started crying because I wanted to stay with my friends in my grade. So he explained to me that was really something great and wonderful. I should be proud and just tell my parents, and they would help me to understand. So when we got out,
What grade were you in?
I went from the 3rd to the 5th grade, which tremendous jump in my opinion. And so one of my other sisters, Linda, a year older than I, were involved in a foot race to get home, all the way home, which is normally if we walked, it would have been about 15 minutes. So we ran just to see if we could get home first, just to blurt out. That sort of stands out in my mind. It's very fun time.
So you then was quite an active student, or a good student.
I was a good student. I wasn't active.
But did you like school?
I really liked school. I did.
So how was it having other brothers and sisters there at the school with you?
There were so many of us that whenever you started class with a new teacher, it would be, are you one of those Woods?
Yes.
Well, I know you're going to get your lesson because your sister was in my class before. You know, that just sort of got to be a tradition, and it worked out fine for me. But of course, if there was a situation where maybe I couldn't have come up to the level where my sisters had performed, then that would have been trouble. So it was quite interesting.
So I'm sure you measured up.
I tried. I tried.
Well, where did you go after you left Washington?
Well, we moved from Southside to Enid Ridge, and from there, I left Washington in the 6th grade, or really at the end of the 5th grade year, and went to Carrington Elementary School, 6th or 8th grade.
Mm-hmm. What was the difference? Well, what was that difference between Washington and Tuggle?
I guess I'd spent a bit more time at Washington. Older siblings had gone through Washington, and we really got to be very, very good friends with the principal there, Dr. Matheson. And it was just a new environment. I really didn't give a green light to innovation, to changes. You know, I wanted to be back at my old school, but it worked out. Tuggle was a great school at that time. Mr. Day, G.F. Day, was principal at Tuggle, and of course, school was school because that was back when they could, you know, discipline the kids. And Mr. Day, along with Dr. Matheson, both had real thick razor straps, you know, they whip us with. So basically, it was the same, but you missed friends.
What about the communities, the difference in the communities? What you lived in the South Side.
Difference in the community improved, I guess, I should say for us, in that when we were on the south side, we lived in housing project in Loveland's Village. And of course, there were like mega millions of kids running around. But once we moved to Enum Ridge, we had our own home, we had our own backyard, our own front yard.
How was that? How did you?
Oh, we died on heaven. That was great. That was great. It really was, and there weren't as many kids, but there were enough. There were enough of us, even if there were no more kids. But just a different environment.
Right.
So
now, you then at a very early age, really, you were at Washington, I believe, when you were involved in the movement.
I think I was.
What was that like? Because your father and your family was so involved in the movement. What was it like being a part of the movement as a child?
It was a frightening time. I have vivid recollection. One thing that happened in particular, and of course Daddy would be gone a lot, involved in the struggle whenever Dr. King would come to town, especially with the threats on his life and a lot of sick people out there. Daddy would always have to go to the airport and pick Dr. King up. I always remember whenever he had to take him back or take him to the hotel that night, there's a place in Birmingham that was called Salter's Barbecue. And Dr. King loved Salter's Barbecue. So Daddy would have to always take him by there, and he'd always send my mom a sandwich. He'd say, take this to the madam. And he'd bring her sandwich home and bring his home. They were like 13 little 100 miles. I remember that. There's a fun memory, but also I remember answering the telephone one day, and just a kid, had not gone to jail at the time, and said hello, and there was a white male on the other end that simply said 2 words, and that was dynamite tonight. Well, I threw the phone down and just ran straight out of the front door and just continued to run. They had to catch me. So that particular night, Daddy was out of town. It was shortly after they had bombed Arthur Shore's home. And we took turns, watching out of the windows on the back side of the house and the front side of the house all night long. As a matter of fact, for the next several nights.
Was this in Enum Ridge?
This was Enum Ridge. Just getting hate calls, those kinds of things. Real frightening for kids.
Right.
And just,
then what was your household like? How did that affect, the effectiveness of
that was a very stressful time for us. We were a close family then, we're still a close family now. So anytime Daddy had to be away, it was like a big deal. It was like my mom and all these kids would always have to just walk in through the door and be sure his bags were packed, and we'd stand there and wave by until the car was, out of sight. So everybody had responsibilities and things that they had to do while he was gone. So number one, we were frightened or not as comfortable because the man of the house was not there. Everybody trying to do what they could to make everybody else feel comfortable. And my mom always stressing to us that, there are a lot of sick people in the world, people in need, be careful, don't, talk to strangers, especially if they're, Caucasians, this kind of thing, because a lot of people want to do you hurt, do you harm, not because of you, the person, but just basically because of what you stand for, the fact that you are Black. So a lot of responsibility on our part to just try and hold things together while he was gone.
confident in each other?
Yeah, most definitely.
Did you attend the mass meetings?
Oh yeah, I remember once. This was when 6th Avenue Baptist Church was actually on 6th Avenue South. Dr. Goodgang, I think, maybe was the pastor, and we would always go to mass meetings. Well, most of the time we went. I remember the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights was meeting every Monday night. And they'd also, if there was an emergency meeting or something, they'd always call. But this particular night, we were supposed to be inside, sitting down. We'd always get restless. We'd never do that. So we'd be outside running around. And I remember one night that we almost knocked Dr. King down. I mean, slapped down. It was this thing that they had where they'd always usher him in. It'd be about 4 or 5, 20 of them. Just come on, Dr. King, Dr. King. And we were just running around the outside of the church and just ran slap dab into me. Fortunately for us, none of those 6 or 20 men were our fathers. We would have gotten it right there. But I remember that he had the most beautiful complexion that I ever seen, just so smooth and peachy like. And we were just standing there going, oh, just totally struck by his presence. He had a very commanding presence. I remember that little child, but we were there, we learned the freedom songs, and we thought it was fun, when they clap hands or lock, across like that. We'd always want to wait until they did that, or even a little chant that they'd have. What do you want? Freedom. What do you want it now? And we'd just be jumping up and down. We wouldn't be saying anything, but vivid recollection of those times.
Were all of your brothers and sisters usually there?
Oh yeah.
Your mother?
Nobody babysit. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a family affair.
It was a family affair, and after that, of course, after it got to be so many years, every year has its number, in this sense, meaning there was another kid coming. Then we start to go and stay on Monday nights, or we were having the meetings down at my grandparents' house, Abraham Woods Sr. And since Abraham Woods Jr. was also involved in the struggle, his kids would be there too. And my grandmother said we were going to be the death of her because
how many kids did he have?
Abraham has 7 kids, and a couple of other aunts, their kids would be there. So Monday night just got to be almost hell night. It was my poor grandparents. I am telling you the truth.
I bet the kids look forward to that.
We did. It got to be, we started a ball game, and of course, if we didn't finish, we continued that score the next Monday night, or either the marble games, or the girls would play the Bobby Jacks or something like that. So it really did. So it was always exciting to see that they had made it home, made it there to pick us up, because we knew the danger that they were involved in. Because you turn the TV on and you see the Bull Connors and, those kinds of people that were, not so much supportive of what they were doing. So it's an exciting time.
What about demonstrations? Were you involved in any demonstrations?
I remember being involved in one demonstration, and that was, of course, when we were arrested. And
how old were you?
I was about 9 years old, terrified. We had been asking my dad if we could go to jail, and he said, for what? And I remember we said, we want our freedom. You want our freedom. So he was always adamant that no, we could not go, we could not participate, even though he'd been arrested several times when they had the sit-ins at the different, maybe Woolworths, restaurant, or places like that. Sorry about that. Okay, that's fine.
Do you need to?
Yeah, somebody's just leaving me an urgent message at work. I put it on vibrators.
Okay.
But he had been arrested, so he knew the danger. We'd seen on TV how they were using the dogs and fire hoses to stop people. So he never granted his permission for us to go. And with the large family that he had, he always had to have a very large car. Mm-hmm. And we'd always sit 2 and 3 deep in the cars, just had one car. And he was getting ready to leave one day because there was a demonstration scheduled. And my 2 older sisters, Jeanette and Linda, and I had gotten on the floor on the back seat of the car and hid.
So he didn't know that you were there.
He did not know we were in the car. We did not make a sound. And when he got where he was going, I think which was maybe the 16th Street Church, we popped up and we went, "Hey, Daddy!" And he was livid. He was, "What are you all doing?" He said, "We want our freedom. We want our freedom." It was like, so, he had no choice because there were scheduled events. And he didn't have time to bring us home. There was nobody he could push us to the side and say, keep them. So, he said, well, you all walk, with this group. But if they, if it appears that they're going to start arresting people, then you all go the other way. Then don't. And I mean, we were like going, yes, sir, and then we go, well, we're gonna be arrested. You know, so we did. We ended up being arrested.
What do you remember about the circumstances of the arrest?
Very short march. Seemingly, law enforcement was prepared, knew that there was going to be a demonstration. And I think maybe we'd gone about 3 or 4 blocks. And we were saying, ain't going to let nobody turn me around. And even though we were saying, I was so scared.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, you were 9 years old and there's probably a massive group of people there.
It was horrible. And so the cops were waiting for them, and seemingly they had the shields or something in front of them. And so the group turns around. I mean, everybody just sort of turns around where they were and go headed back this way. And there's another set of cops waiting right there. So you end up being bunched there. So they threw us in the paddy wagon, and I was really afraid then. But I was determined not to show that fear. So I took city jail and discovered that we were much too young to be there.
So it was all kids?
Mostly kids, probably one of the school demonstrations. And I remember when we got to the jail on the south side, 670 South, there was an officer, and I read his name badge, and it was Patterson. Still remember that. And he looked at me and wanted me to shut up a little bigger because I was singing loud, but really that was trying to calm myself, just very resounding voice because Daddy always talked loud and sing. So we thought we were supposed to do everything loud. You get up in church to say a speech and go, say it loud. So I was just singing, and he told me to shut up. Little nigger, you shut up. And I always see on TV where, when they told me to shut up, they would say, I was determined. So I started singing louder and go, just terrible. So then they threw us back in the paddy wagon and took us to juvenile. Stayed there about 8 days, 7 or 8 days. I stayed a long time.
Were other of your siblings involved in that?
Yeah, there were 7 Woods in that one, because my dad's baby sister, Kathy Woods Jackson, was also in that cell. So there was Daddy's 3 oldest girls, Abraham's 3 oldest girls, and my Aunt Kathy. There were 7 of us.
7 of them.
So we sort of had a monopoly, If somebody started something with one of us, they go, hey, 6 more of them. But it was awful. It was this one huge room where it was many beds on each side, no privacy. That terrified me. Well, I should have been used to that. We didn't have any privacy at home. You had to bathe 2 and 3 at a time, or that kind of stuff. So we were so ready to go home. Didn't have a change of clothes or anything.
What do you remember about those 8 days?
I remember that I got tired of eating applesauce that was served as a vegetable for dinner.
Do you like applesauce now?
I will eat it, but I can't tell you the last time I ate applesauce. Having to be in a place where there were like so many other people other than your family. It's the first time we've ever really been away from home. Ever been around people that weren't family. I was just frightening.
Were you the youngest?
I was the youngest, the absolute youngest in the cell, in that area, the Holden area, whatever. I remember we had to line up to go and eat, line up to come back.
What did you do all day?
Basically just sat around and maybe talk, and we try and there's one girl, her name was Carolyn. She was from North Birmingham, could have been from Carver High School, I can't remember, but I remember her, and she was very vocal, very outspoken, and she'd always sort of get things started. The fights, the freedom songs, the whatever. So she'd lead us in singing and those kinds of things, and it was just basically had very long days. And we could have done other things I don't recall.
Now you were missing school. I'm assuming this is in May of '63. So what was that like when you? Well, firstly, what were the circumstances of your release? How did you get out?
I really don't remember. All I know is the day we were released, that my mom and dad and Abraham and his wife Marion and probably my grandparents were standing outside waiting for us under this tree, by this tree, and we just all went running toward them, like we'd really been let out from jail, and we really had. But we were so glad to see them. But I had no earthly idea. I just thought that, and you know, it's a question I've never really asked. And I guess at that time I just assumed, well, we've stayed long enough, it's time to go home.
What was your reception at home by the family as
Oh.
well as by your classmates?
We were heroes. Oh. Touch me, I've been to jail. It was, you sort of got the feeling that they're very proud of what you've done. And of course, with us being the oldest, I was 9, Linda was 10, and Jeanette was 11. And I think the kid that was closest to us was Sheila. Sheila was 7. So they really kind of wanted to get out and fight for their freedom too, that kind of thing. And of course, other kids at school that didn't have the same opportunity. So they go, "What y'all doing?" You know, we like make up tales like, "Oh, we was gonna beat those people," that kind of. So it turned us into little unsung heroes. We were just.
Did you remember any anything that your teachers may have said about your incarceration?
Have no recollection whatsoever. Nothing.
Well, this being 63, you were 9 years old. How did that experience impact upon you from then on?
Not so much. I can't give so much credit maybe to that particular experience, but basically the foundation. The fact that the family was then, still is now, and probably always will be involved in pursuing equal treatment of other human beings. I think it's just a part of my nature. It's just that innate ability to, you know, want to react or act as opposed to reacting, I should say. And I don't really know if that had any significant impact on my life or not. If it did in a positive light, I could say that I never want to go to jail for any reason. Even when they took us for a very, very short time to the city jail, it was horrible just to, you know, to see a cell, actually see a cell. And I'm thinking, God, you know, it's just like the cages at the zoo where they throw animals in. So,
if you had young children and the movement was at its zenith right now, children your age, would you encourage them or allow them to participate, to go to jail?
I would probably not encourage them to go to jail.
Would you discourage them from jail, Bob?
I wouldn't discourage them from being involved. I think times have changed. You don't have unified front of, you know, a particular ethnic group now as you did then. I think the majority of blacks at that time were all involved or sort of empathized with, you know, the cause of the freedom movement. But people are so different now. Operate with maybe hidden agendas, and a lot of times if you follow different demonstrations and movements today, a lot of people piggyback off of one cause simply to promote another cause. And how many times have you heard of people thinking that they were protesting or supporting one thing, you know, and something else surfaces? So I would just have to advise them to be ever, ever, ever so cautious. You know, because times have changed.
Tell me, you went on to Parker High School?
Yeah, well, I started Parker High School in the 9th grade, and it was during the time where they were working to abolish segregation and integrate school systems here in Birmingham. I think Dwight and Floyd Armstrong, which their father, Mr. Armstrong, was very actively involved and still is in the movement. had gotten him in Gray Mount Elementary School. It was so big, so big, because they were involved in running around the church with us and playing and all these kinds of things. So after they were accepted in Gray Mount Elementary School, my dad forced us to go to Phillips High School. So went to Parker High School in the 9th grade and Phillips in the 10th and the 11th grade. And because I was going to be the only one left the next year, he did have mercy on me and let me go back to Parker and graduate in the 12th grade.
So you were there for 1 year, 2 years?
2 years.
Okay. What was that experience? How many black kids were there?
Not very many.
What was that
Not very many.
experience?
There were fights. You'd walk down the hall, which fortunately I never had any problems. And I don't remember family members ever having any problems. But I do remember other incidents, people maybe fighting. There was a day that one of the white guys stabbed a black guy with a fork in the school cafeteria. Insults, nigger this and that kind of thing. But our parents always just encouraged us that, the best thing to do is to ignore some of that. If you try to retaliate or, get even or fight back, there were too many of them, and, situations weren't as such that we would be supported for defending ourselves. So we tried to keep a low profile. And it wasn't really that bad, but it wasn't the most comfortable situation to be in.
What year did you finish Parker?
1970.
So this was 67, 68 when you were at Phillips.
Yeah, yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So that was
67
rather-
through, 67, 60 through 69.
So were the three oldest girls at Phillips
Well,
together?
the oldest was there, Jeanette, and I was there, and the middle child, the second oldest, Linda, because she was a cheerleader at Park. Begged, I mean begged, on her knees, begged Daddy to let her stay at Parker. So she, was granted his graces. So it was Jeanette and I, and Abraham's kids were there too. That was his family thing. So myself and sister Jeanette, Abraham had about 2 other kids there, and my dad's youngest sister, Kathy, that was in jail with us, she was there also. So we stick together. We sort of stick together. Yeah.
What did you do after high school?
Well, I wanted to go off to school, and Daddy was just adamant that his daughters were not going all the way out of town. All the way out of town. So I didn't start college right away. I went to work, started working. As a matter of fact, the way it happened was really ironic because we graduated from high school and we were walking around. We had absolutely nothing to do. There were about 5 or 6 of us, and we went down, caught a bus and went downtown, 2121 building, got a Social Security card, and we thought that we were legally grown or something then. We graduated, got a Social Security card. And there was a Shoney's restaurant downtown. We went and ate in Shoney's, the first time we'd ever been out by ourselves to eat. So we were a big time. So we said, let's go get a job. And so we said, oh, okay. So we started going to these places, filling out applications. Well, we went to South Central Bell, just playing around. And I was able to gain employment there, and I'm still there. It's about 27 years later, so I'm still still there. And I have attended school. I've gone to Birmingham Southern College. I've not finished, just in and out. You know how that is. A while, very short time at Booker T. Washington Business College, and a couple of courses at Birmingham Baptist Bible College, I think, which is now Birmingham Baptist Eastonian Seminary or Baptist College, or one or the other.
Well, that, what you have shared with us, particularly your experiences as a child during the movement, is so very, very helpful.
Great.
Because what that does, that tells us, really gives us another vantage point from which to view the movement.
Yeah.
And many people have not had that vantage point.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So you've been very helpful. Is there anything else that you may want to leave with us today that we have left out? We covered a lot of territory.
Okay, well, I talk a lot. I don't know if you can do that.
I had to figure that out.
Surprise. No, nothing in particular. I think it is so important for people to know that if they don't stand for something, that they will fall for anything. Whereas I said I would not encourage my children or my child. I do have one son, Julian. He's about 24 years old. He is a graduate of Auburn University, and I had a grandson who's 2 years old. So there are people that I influence, I'd like to think, greatly. Very major part of their decision making. But I guess what I would say to him, to my grandson, or to anyone is to study, to go to the library, to read, get on the internet, talk to people that were involved, and find out how these things came about. So many of our young people today are so far removed from what brought them from chaos to community or whatever, and they just really don't care, don't have a sense of pride about who or what they are. And that's something that I think I gained from the movement or the involvement, the experience of going to jail, the experience of growing up in a family such as mine that's been so heavily involved in fighting for something. So you have to identify first who you are and stand on who you are and certainly be proud of that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.